Good afternoon. I am Katrina Foley, the District Supervisor for District 2 for the Orange County Board of Supervisors. And today we are launching our Get to Know Your Budget series, and we will be giving you some insight on how the county goes about preparing the budget, and also a bit of a roadmap for the budget process, which has already begun long before I got sworn into office. And also how can we as a community participate in the budget process and the preparation. I know that many residents are very interested in our budget. It's more than $7.5 billion. And so we serve a lot of the community with these funds. So today we have a few topics planned. One, how the budget is developed, and what my role and my colleagues' role as supervisor are in the preparation of the budget, both this year as well as moving forward into the next fiscal cycle. And then also, what do we fund as a county? What are we required to fund through our state and federal mandates, as well as our contractual obligations? And what does the county have discretion over with the revenue that comes into the county coffers? So today we are joined by Lisa Bohan-Johnston, and she is the budget director for Orange County. She has the hardest job here. Welcome, Lisa. Lisa will provide a presentation going over the budget, and I'll be asking some questions throughout. I hope this is informative for you. It's just the first in a series of us trying to help the community better understand how the budget works here in Orange County. So Lisa, welcome. And can you get us started? What's the timeline for the budget preparation?
This chart provides the full cycle of the budget process. The county operates on a July to June fiscal year, and plans for the upcoming fiscal year, meaning the year ahead, begin in August with a strategic financial plan. In that blue boxes there, you can see the strategic financial plan is a process that begins in August and goes through December. It's a 5-year department forecast of revenue and expenditures. Also at that time, departments identify any capital and IT projects that are greater than $150,000 in 1 year. Also notable in the strategic financial plan are strategic priorities. These are new initiatives that the department is estimating will cost more than $1 million in any 1 year of the 5-year plan. And this document serves as the basis for the next fiscal year planning.
So is that the time period, August through December, when the board offices can get involved in preparing for next year's budget?
Exactly. This would be, so departments would be working on their plans, and that's when the board offices would work with the departments. That's usually August, September, and then in October, and it actually goes to the Board of Supervisors then in December. So yes, that August, September, October time period is critical for new items for the next fiscal year, and absolutely for any of these kind of the big ticket items, any kind of program that's going to require significant county resources. And it's also a way when we identify the capital and IT projects, it allows also at the CEO, the county executive office level, an opportunity to see if departments are doing similar projects that maybe they could be working together on.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and then what happens in January after the board has the hearing on the strategic financial plan?
Right, so thank you. That next step then is the first working day of the new year, January. Our county budget office sends out to the departments their budget instructions. And at that point in time, it's identified the base budget. And the base budget for county departments that receive county general fund, you'll also hear that referred to as net county cost, abbreviated NCC. They, at that point in time, are being notified of if that net county cost or county general fund for those departments that receive those, what to expect for the following fiscal year. And they also are and that point, identifying any capital and IT project requests. And those are then consistent with what they had included just a few months ago in the strategic financial plan. So they've been through the plan, and now we're going to see them in their budget request. That bullet point regarding augmentations, that's a really critical part of the budget adoption process, and particularly with the board's approval of budget augmentations. We use that term augmentations to identify any changes that are a variation from the base budget. So you see Restore Augmentations, it's the point where the departments are identifying if there's a gap between what they've been notified by the budget office of their county general fund and what they identify as a need for continuing on at the level of service they're currently at. So for example, in our 21-22 budget, you would see a Restore Augmentation to keep the level of service at the 2021 level.
And that really is because something might cost more than it cost last year. And so in order to keep that baseline level of service, you might have to increase the budget due to the increase in costs. Is that an easy way to explain it?
Precisely. That's just there's an increased cost of doing business, and health premiums have gone up, or whatever costs have gone up. So yes, so that department's saying no, we're staying pat on our level of service, but we do have a funding gap.
Okay. And then I wanted to show the community before we move on. This is the Augmentation Book. So it's a thinner book than the big budget books that we have here. But this has got all the different categories of departments and all their augmentations. This is a helpful guide for the community.
Thank you. And in that book, we have the Expand Augmentations also. So those are if there's a new program, project, a request to add positions, it's an increase in the current level of service. So those are submitted by departments, and the Supervisor Foley, that book, then we have an augmentation book. So that's separate from the base budget, and the base budgets are the large volumes 1 and 2.
Can I ask you a quick question just so that people can understand this definition of net county cost? Can you explain that one more time?
Definitely. So the net county cost is, you hear the term general fund. What it is our revenue that is not coming from the state and federal government for a particular purpose, or it's not already tied up and are restricted. And we'll get, we have like John Wayne Airport or waste and recycling, flood, road, library. So it's the funds that come, and they're derived from property tax revenue primarily. 90% of what we would call net county cost, or really we call it net county cost when it's in the department's budget, because that's what their net county cost is. It's under the umbrella of a general purpose revenue. So we have those dollars identified each year, primarily from property tax revenue, and then any sources of funds that are coming in. And those are really the discretionary dollars that the board then approves the allocation of with the budget adoption, or any of the augmentations that are approved that request county general funds and net county cost.
So let me give an example, and you tell me if this is helpful, just to help people understand. So if there's a budget request and there's 100% needed to fund a department, and 80% is provided from the state or the federal government, and then 20% is needed to complete the budget requirements, that 20% is what the net county cost is going to cover. Is that right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right. I think we're getting it. Next slide, or so the next phase comes in March.
Right, so March 1st, the departments have been working on their budgets for January and February, and on March 1st, they submit their budget, and this is all through a performance budgeting system that the county utilizes. So that's the date when the budgets are, in essence, due to the county budget office. At that point in time, we're reviewing those requests. We're looking at those and their consistency and alignment with the strategic financial plan. We've talked about the base budget and then the capital IT projects and any expand augmentations that were identified in the strategic financial plan. We see if they're in alignment. And then we meet, and the CEO, the county executive officer, and the chief financial officer, and members of our budget team meet with each of the departments to review their budget requests that they've input into the system. We're working on understanding any variances and any requests. And at that point in time, we work on that, and we work towards the development to prepare the balanced budget. And in May, and this year was on May 19th, we released the recommended budget. And released is we posting it to the internet, and we also provide the documentation that you've held up, the budget volume
So these
for the base
books
budget.
here. And this
Yes.
is all available online. So you don't have to carry these heavy books around. And you can look at it on the website, which we'll have a link to that later. Can I make a point here? So for me, I got elected in March after the budgets were already all submitted on March 1st to the CEO. So our office didn't really have a chance to participate yet in this budget process for this fiscal year. But we've had a chance to still talk with the CEO and work with the different departments to find out if there's places in their budget where some of the priorities that we've heard from our cities in the community that they need. And so this process comes, and then May 19th, at least for this year, the budget's released. And then we get to the board. And what happens next?
So the next is the orange box here, where we have the public budget hearing this year that's scheduled on June 8th. And there the board is presented the CEO recommended budget. And the board reviews the budget with a first look at base budgets, and then if there's any augmentations. The straw votes referenced there are the process by which the county adopts the budget. Is a presentation of a base budget, and we do that at the budget program level. And the board then casts a straw vote. And what the straw vote is it's an informal, non-binding, and it's a vote on we do this on the base budget, and then also we do separate votes for the Restore Augmentations and Expand Augmentations. So members of the budget team will present the budget to the board, and at various points throughout the public budget hearing, and those points align to base budgets and also to Restore and Expand Augmentations, we ask the board to give a yes, kind of essence, a thumbs up, that 3 out of the 5 board members are supporting the base budget for that program, or for a department, they're supporting the Restore or Expand Augmentation. So the budget's presented by the member of our budget team, and ask for the board to have a straw vote. That's the place where there might be board questions, and there's we ask for discussion and straw votes, and then there's the clerk of the board will keep track of the votes, and all of those points, those decision points at base budget and augmentations, where there are 3 or more votes, we use that as, again, non-binding, but we need the information on what is being approved in order for us to prepare the final budget. So that's where we have the base budget, and then any of what we've been referring to augmentations, again, those changes from the base budget.
So,
And
So let me ask a question. When we are out there voting on the straw votes, is it that it's going to be a vote by department budget? The department will present the budget and then there'll be a straw vote on that particular department budget?
Great question, because what we do is for the base budgets, so we're just not going over every single department's base budget. We approve base budgets at the program level. So department, there's 7 budget programs. But for the Restore and Expand Augmentation, we ask the board to provide straw votes for those at the department level.
Okay. And we have a slide that shows the 7 programs here coming up, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Now, when does the public get to participate in this discussion and these straw votes?
So the part of the public budget hearing is an opportunity for the public to comment on the entire budget. So there's early on in the public budget hearing, there's an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, and other than at the hearing, is there another way that the public can comment?
Yes, there is. We've got the link later in our slides, so you'll have it available. But there is an opportunity to provide public comment through to the county through the internet. Also, if folks want to get word to us through, we can, through the board offices, or if they wanted to call the county executive office, we could document any of those comments and make sure that all of the 5 board members are aware.
Wonderful. Now in June, other than this budget hearing that occurs on June 8th, and it could go to June 9th, depending on how long it takes us to get through the hearing. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
and
correct.
Then we have one more hearing in June. And when is that?
That's on June 22nd. And at that point in time, the final budget adoption is scheduled. Now, notable with that, if there's any changes at that point in time from the June 8th and possibly into June 9th, when the public budget hearing closes, then any changes from the budget require a 4/5 vote, and that would be on June 22nd. And really technically then all the way through June 30th of the next year, because our new fiscal year will start on July 1st. So any changes to we call them appropriations, so that's that spending authority, that occur outside of the public budget hearing where there's the 3/5 non-binding straw vote. And again, any changes at that point in time too, during June 8th, and if it goes into June 9th at the public budget hearing, need to be in writing, and then they're incorporated into the final budget document, which is then scheduled for board adoption on the 22nd.
Okay, great. And then the board votes on June 22nd, and at that time, the public will have an opportunity to make comment on that date as well, correct?
That's correct. And on June 22nd, the budget adoption is, at that point, it's one of the agenda items on that meeting date. So it's not a special, like the public budget hearing where we try to have, no or just very other few items on the board's agenda that day, knowing that it could go very lengthy day.
Okay. So when you look at the budget for certain departments, it looks like some departments are asking for more money than they were originally allocated. Can you explain, you touched on it a little bit, but do you have an example where you can explain the difference between the Restore Augmentation versus the Expand Augmentation?
Certainly. So this slide is giving an example of a Restore Augmentation. So if you were to look at page 121 of the volume 1, the budget book, again, that's the base budget, you would see the sheriff's at a glance budget, and this would reflect their base budget, and it does not include what the department has requested as by way of a Restore Augmentation. As you pointed out, there's a separate document with the Augmentations. So what the sheriff did in this case is to meet their net county cost limit, that general fund that we advised them on in January, that as they're building their budget, this department, the sheriff's department, and all the other departments that receive the county general fund, and we call it the net county cost, they get that, and that's a cap. So to your example, where you have the 100% and then 80% funded, and then there's a funding gap, that's department puts together what they call or reduce to say, well, for us to make that number, which is going to cause a funding gap, they kind of, in essence, reduce their budget and say, what would the impact of that be? In the case of the sheriff's department, their reduced augmentation would impact 342 existing positions. And with that, the sheriff submitted a Restore Augmentation, and that's to maintain the current levels of operation.
Okay.
And the CEO is recommending that Restore. What I wanted to point out here with regard to the sheriff, there's another layer here of a reason why there's a funding gap when they did their request for Restore. Their total request for Restore was $101.5 million. The CEO is recommending $85.2 million. That funds those 342 positions and the other costs that the sheriff had identified that was a funding gap. The county executive office, the county executive officer is not recommending that the board fund $16.3 million, because at this point in time, that is entirely a result of a shortfall between the state's funding for court security. We get allocated a funding allocation for court security, which is a state operation. The sheriff provides those services, and the sheriff's projected their cost to provide court security in fiscal year 21-22 is $16.3 million more than the state is providing. So there's an intentional gap. We've got a write-up in the key budget message, which I could talk about later, and also within the highlights of our budget. We have been working, and we've asked the sheriff to work with the court, and we are working with the California State Association of Counties. This shortfall in court security funding is not unique to Orange County, so it's an area that we felt that we want to acknowledge that gap and have that gap still addressed as we go through the 21-22 fiscal year.
This is great. And this gives us a perfect example of so many different components of the budget. The sheriff's budget, many people don't know, is predominantly funded from Prop 172, law enforcement services, sales tax revenue. And those sales tax revenues are required to be used for public protection and the sheriff's budget. Is that right?
Right, they are required to use for public safety, and the board's prior decision allocates the half-cent sales tax, and 80% of that revenue goes to the sheriff's department and 20% goes to the district attorney's office.
Okay, and so I think what's really important for the public to know is that the county doesn't have any discretion over whether to take those sales tax revenue dollars and, for example, move them over to parks, right?
Correct.
The only caveat would be if they are protecting the parks with either the sheriff's budget or the DA's budget, right?
Right. So the Prop 172, right, is allocated to the district attorney and the sheriff's office.
Yes.
And yeah, there are restrictions on how that money can be spent.
And so the balance of the sheriff's budget, the 20%, let's say, is coming from a whole variety of sources. It's coming from our net county costs, which is also another way of saying the county's general fund. And it's also coming from if they get any grants or if they have any contractual obligations with any of the cities that contract with the sheriff to provide services. Is that right?
Right. And just to clarify that, of the Prop 172, 80% goes to the sheriff, but it is less than 80% of the sheriff's budget.
Right.
It's somewhere.
So that I think is really important for the public to understand. Now, as it relates to the current Restore request, I just want to make sure that we all understand that's not a request for 342 additional positions, right?
You're correct. That's to retain the funding for 342 existing positions.
Okay, because I think sometimes that gets confusing in how it's worded. I also wanted to make sure that people understood that, and I learned this morning, that all of the county budgets in the state of California all use similar language and similar formats so that there can be consistency across the state, so that if somebody's looking at a county budget in San Diego or LA and comparing it to Orange County, they can find the information in the same format. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I think that's really helpful to know. I didn't know that before today. So thanks for sharing that. And then as it relates to this budget gap issue, as a lawyer, as somebody who has spent a lot of time in the courtroom and really rely on the bailiffs and the security there to be able to do my job and for the jurors to be safe and the judges and the court staff to be safe. This is an important issue. And I know that we've been talking about how can we work with the state to help us resolve this issue so that we keep our courts safe. So I'll keep working on that. Okay, so that was a really helpful discussion. Now, can you explain what portion of the budget, we've talked about how some things in the sheriff's budget are mandated and restricted. Can you explain overall what portion of the budget is mandated by state and federal or contractual obligations, and what portion is discretionary to the board so that the board can make decisions about that money?
Sure. So this pie chart shows the entirety of the $7.7 billion budget for 21-22. And these three pieces of the pie show the various, what they call pots or slices of funds. The largest revenue allocation, that's depicted in blue at $3.6 billion, or 46.9% of the budget, is comprised of what is termed dedicated revenue. This revenue is linked to specific programs such as John Wayne Airport, OC Waste and Recycling, the Road Fund, the Flood Fund, the Library, and Parks. So the use of this revenue is restricted for those specific purposes.
Okay, and what does CFDs stand for? And IS?
Those are community facility districts. So those are the various, there's some in South County where they're building the new developments and they take those out. So those are kind of a pass-through that the county does.
Okay, and what's an ISF for the public?
That is the internal service funds. So those are where departments are providing internal services, like we have reprographics, and so they're doing internal services for other departments.
Okay, and so we've talked about the restricted funds, and then we've got general purpose revenue and other general fund. Can you tell us the difference between those two slices of the
Sure. So so now we're away from having those dedicated revenues. So the other parts of the budget the green and the orange areas represent, we just refer them as general fund, but here the majority are the green area, that 3.2 billion or 41.1% are specific purposes. And the monies here are primarily the funding of the administration of various federal and state programs in the Social Services Agency, the Healthcare Agency, Child Support Services, and then other grant monies that come in. We had talked with the sheriff. That's an example of a city contract where a lot of the South County cities, Yorba Linda is one where those cities are engaged in a contract with the sheriff's department to provide police services to their city. And those are contractually done between the city and the county to provide those sheriff services. So it's a sheriff contract with the city.
And that 3.2 billion also includes, for example, state funding that comes in for homeless services, and that can only be used for a specific type of service related to treating individuals who are experiencing homelessness, or mental health services, or maybe it's a juvenile justice grant. Is that right?
Correct. So those monies are coming in and they have to be used for the specific purpose. So really here the county is administrating these programs, but they're really federal or state programs.
And we really don't have discretion other than to select how the service is performed. We don't have discretion, but to use it for that very specific purpose, right?
Right. And then the discretion on how to do it would be based on the guidelines of that funding source.
Right. And then the general purpose revenue, which is only 12% of the budget, that's where we have a little bit of discretion, but not much, right? That's
right. So that's funding county mandates. It funds the public protection is a county mandate versus a state or a federal mandate. And also with the state and federal funds that the county receives, there's often a required match. So those match dollars come out of the general purpose revenue. And key with the general purpose revenue, which is the discretionary revenue, is that it is derived from property tax revenue. About 90+% of that general purpose revenue comes from property tax from Orange County. And Orange County receives, of the property tax dollar, Orange County receives about 5 cents, which is the lowest of all 58 counties. If we look at our neighbor, San Diego County, with the similar population, over 3 million, San Diego County retains 12 cents of their property tax dollar. So when you look at, we talk about looking at other entities' budget, if you were to look at what their general purpose discretionary revenue, it's significantly higher because of the fact that they're able, they have more property tax revenue in their budget.
So why is that? And I know that now Congressman Lou Correa, then as Supervisor Correa and Assemblyman Correa had worked on this for many years. And I remember hearing him talk about this often. So can you explain to those who are new to this, why is it that we only get 5 cents on the dollar versus 12 cents from other counties?
And that could be a whole other call to have.
Let's have a whole conversation about that. But just in a nutshell, is it a state decision? Is there a way we can?
My understanding, it's historical. So there was a series of shifts, and at the time that those determinations were being made, my understanding is the county was much smaller, more rural, and because it's a dollar, it's a property tax dollar. So if we're only getting 5 cents, that means that 95 cents is going out to other entities. So if the county is able to retain more, then that other remaining 95 cents is going to have to come from one of the other entities that's currently receiving it.
Right. Well, That is a topic for us to continue to discuss. Very important for Orange County. Okay, so next question. How, we talked about this pie chart here. How is the budget sliced up?
So the way the budget's sliced up, and we call this appropriations by use. So basically, what are the categories where these funds are being allocated? And like the county, like another business, primarily the biggest chunk at 31.1% are on our employees, on the cost of salaries and benefits. The next largest piece are the services and supplies. So about a quarter of the budget is on contracts and providing, the smaller equipment that's not coming under like a capital asset. But those two pieces together comprise, over 50% of the budget. The remaining pieces there that you see, the remaining slices, are attached to commitments of loans, special items, contingencies, but really those two big chunks take up the lion's share of the budget.
Well, and that's common. This ratio is common across all counties, right? Because we're a service organization. We don't sell widgets.
Exactly.
Okay. So what are the different programs? You talked about that before. Tell us about the different programs.
Yes. So our budget in the county is comprised of 7 program areas. And these are groupings of like services within a program area. So we have public protection, and we've got the 5 departments there. Community services, which we spoke of, and that's the child support, the healthcare agency, OC Community Resources, and social services agency. Again, that's where the lion's share of the budget is. We have what we refer to as infrastructure and environmental, and those are the dedicated revenue budgets that we saw, but those are the operations, John Wayne Airport, Public Works, which includes the road and flood, and also our OC waste and recycling. You see the biggest area there in purple is general government, and there are, if you count the Board of Supervisors, which is 5 different departments, but if you were to put those all together into one, there's 11 departments within general government. The program areas of capital improvements and debt service do not have any separate departments, but we do have our 7th program area of insurance reserves and miscellaneous, which is a very long title, but that's where you see some of these funds we talked about, where employee benefits, fleet services, our OC, IT, reprographics, and risk management. So each department falls within a program area, and the budget presentation with the public budget hearing is by program area, and we take it sequentially. So we will start with program area number 1, public protection, and then the final program area that the board would review and we'd be presenting for straw votes would be program area number 7, the red there, the insurance reserves and miscellaneous.
Okay, so I want to focus for a moment on John Wayne Airport as what we call a business enterprise, right? And can you share about how the business enterprise departments have some restrictions on how those funds are used? Like use John Wayne Airport as an example.
So for John Wayne Airport, so each department will have their restrictions. So on the previous pie chart, we call that dedicated revenue. So we know that the revenue and the expenditures within John Wayne Airport are going to be paid for within that, and revenue generated from the John Wayne Airport's operations. So when you see projects there, the capital projects, those are being funded by John Wayne Airport, unless maybe they got a grant from the FAA or, that is though in itself a separate department where its all of revenue and all the expenditures stay within John Wayne Airport.
And I think it's important for the public to know that the FAA and the federal law prevent the county from actually moving any of that revenue that's generated at John Wayne Airport over to the general fund. Is that right?
Absolutely correct.
So even though it might seem like John Wayne Airport is making a lot of money and that should benefit Orange County, that has to stay at the airport. We can't take it over and, do an after-school program with it, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what other, is that the same for OC Waste and Recycling?
Yes, it is. OC Waste and Recycling, their budget is also framed where it's restricted revenue. There are, so in the county, there's some unincorporated areas where the waste and recycling has the opportunity to have funds that can be through contracts benefit the county. So it's a little bit different because it's a county-wide, and there's contracts that are in place for that also impact the unincorporated areas of the county, which then are not like, they're not cities, so it's a county.
So like Rossmore in my district. Rossmore is an unincorporated area that's like a city, but it's county.
Yeah.
I want to also just highlight, I think sometimes people don't think about public protection and think of the public defender's office or the Office of Independent Review within public protection. But the budget for public protection does include the public defender's office, right?
Correct.
And then
Correct.
can you just briefly explain what is the Office of Independent Review?
Sure. The Board of Supervisors established the Office of Independent Review to identify and address high risk and potential liability issues in 5 county agencies. And those include the Sheriff's Department, the Office of the District Attorney, the Probation Department, Social Services, and the Public Defender's Office.
Okay, and they're attorneys that work in that office, and they basically investigate complaints for those departments that you described, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I think that this has been super helpful to explain to the public all the different programs and to sort of set the stage for the hearing on June 8th, where we'll start with program number 1, public protection, and we'll go to program number 2, community services, program number 3, infrastructure and environmental, program number 4, general government, program number 5, capital improvements, program number 6, debt service, and then program number 7, insurance reserves and miscellaneous. And that's how the budget hearing will be organized, so that when people are watching, they'll know that the first up to bat is public protection. And then if they care about insurance reserves and miscellaneous, they can check in at the end. Okay,
Correct.
so let's talk a little bit about the number of positions that we have here employed in the County of Orange.
Sure. So the slide here is showing the number of positions that are in the base budget for 21-22. So this would be before the Restore Augmentations and the Expand Augmentations would be approved by the board at the public budget hearing. So in the base budget, there's 17,489 positions. And you can see across the color code, the program area, most of the positions are in the community services, and that's a little over 8,500. Next in line is with public protection, that orange piece of the pie, and in the table, you can see each position number by budget control. So instead of being by department, this chart and table, which is from the recommended budget book, page 18, shows the positions by budget control. So some of the departments have more than one budget control, but the total of public protection is just under 6,000 positions. Program 3, Infrastructure and Environmental, is a little over 1,200 positions. General Government Services, about 1,345 positions. And finally, Program 7 is the small program with 359 positions.
Okay, and so this is the base budget, right? So what do we expect to
Right.
see the CEO recommend in terms of the increase in the number of positions?
So the CEO recommendation is for the board to approve the Restore Augmentations, which we have 2. We spoke already of the sheriff's 342 positions. The public defender has a Restore Augmentation for 56 positions. So that would be 398 Restore positions are being recommended. Additionally, there's a request augmentation, and across all the departments, it totals to 113 positions that are tied to Expand Augmentation requests that the CEO is recommending. If the board were to adopt the CEO recommendations, so you'd have the base budget plus the Restore plus the Expand, the total number of positions would be 18,000.
And we'll be looking at those on June 8th and having the discussion, and that's where we will be doing those straw votes, right? Okay.
Correct.
And so where can the public go to read the budget, to read the summaries of the budget, to read the what we're calling the Restore and Expand Augmentation, to read and to give input? Where can they go?
We've got all of the documents posted on the county internet. So the county internet, ocgov.com, there's a search box right at the top of the home landing page. And if you type the word budget in there, you will find the links to the budget page. Here I am opening the web page, and apologies for the delay.
There we go. We did
Okay.
it.
So here we are with the budget. So again, this is off of the county. This presentation has the link, and I know we're making that available to Supervisor Foley's office. So this link takes you to the budget and also provides you information historically for previous year's budget. But importantly, when we look at this 2021 budget, 21-22 budget, I want to point out the key budget message. That is a document that if you want to call it, if we still call it Cliff Notes, Spark Notes, it's the nutshell of what are the main theme of the budget, what we're looking at, and it also gives you kind of a real quick description of those augmentations that we've been discussing. It's such an important document that we make it available in 5 languages here on our internet site. We also have here each of the budget documents. We have the Chief Executive Officer, Frank Kim, drafts a introductory letter or a budget letter of transmittal. That also gives his kind of summary of the budget. It provides a high-level overview, and it also mentions some of the programs that are critical that are in the budget. And again, another very important document that we provide links to 5 translations and 5 different languages, translations to 5 different languages. The page also has then the recommended budget documents, which we've been talking about, the augmentation document. These key budget terms, when you ask what does that mean, this key budget terms, I'm wondering how long it would take to open. So I might skip that. But some of these terms you see, our effort here for our budget team is we try to, make this accessible. So it's an attempt to see if there some of these phrases that we use to explain them in just plain terms. So that's the key budget
Like
terms
net
document.
county costs,
And
you know,
also-
that's one of those terms.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Also available here is a link to department contacts. So this department contacts, every department is available for the public to contact directly. We also in this department contacts provide the website for that department. So individual wondering what does the assessor do can click and get to their homepage. And if there's questions, each department head's phone number is here, as well as their senior staff. So individuals on this list are aware, you know, and are welcoming, you know, if there's questions, this is for the public's access to talk to individuals in the departments if they have questions, really on anything, but particularly we have it here within the context of the budget.
This is a great resource for the community because sometimes it just takes a minute to answer a question and it changes the whole perception of someone. So thank you so much for having that resource. Okay, well, this has been a great discussion. I hope that people have found that we're trying to make sure that the community has access to the budget process.
Yeah.
And we really have appreciated you taking time. You're very busy right now with preparing for the budget hearings. And we will see you on June 8th. And if you have any questions, please do put your questions in the chat. We will do our best to try to answer them. If we can't answer them immediately, we will do the research and get back to you. But please do engage with our office because we're here to serve. Thank you, everyone.